hope you're not too tired.
No, actually, it's they've been really interesting questions, and yeah, it's been good fun. And I'm in Paris, so I can't complain. I lived here in 2008.
For how long are you here?
Just till Monday.
But since how long?
Oh, since Sunday. Yeah.
Where'd you get this?
On the shelf.
If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. A rumbling sound, then 3 sharp knocks.
Babadook, duk, duk.
That's when you'll know he's around. You'll see him if you look.
When I was very young, like 6 and 7, I started to write and direct and act in plays. So I just wrote them at school, and then as I became a teenager, I kept doing that, but I was drawn more to acting. And I went to NIDA, which is our National Institute of Dramatic Art in Australia, and I studied acting there, but I got really bored very quickly with acting. It just, I don't have the temperament to sit around waiting for a job. And I felt, I was also encouraged or discouraged to write and direct at acting school. And so I just kind of forgot about it for a little while. But then, you know, a couple of years into my acting career, I really didn't want to be acting anymore. So I started to move more into writing and directing. And I went and did an apprenticeship on Dogville, which was a film by Lars von Trier. And that was when I really decided that I wanted to make my own films. So I do love horror film, and you know, ever since I was a kid, I really love all kinds of horror films. So I really, you know, have watched everything. But it wasn't my intention to just scare with this film. I was really attracted to the story about this mother who just couldn't, for whatever reason, find the love for her child. And so, you know, it was a story about her trying to walk through hell to get to the other side and to find the love for her son. Having said that, though, I knew it wasn't going to be a drama. It wasn't going to be a straight drama film. It felt right in the horror genre, and I would call it a horror, but then I have a very broad view of what horror is. For me, what makes a film scary is when I invest in characters and when they're real and complex. So I needed for that to be real first. And I always went back to the characters as well. Of course I was aware of what world I was in. You know, I was creating a film that had a lot of fear in it, so I had to be aware. But it wasn't my first thought. My first thoughts were with those characters and making them as complex as I could. Because if you don't relate to them, you can't be scared. You know, you can watch a film where 15 people get killed and you don't care at all. And it's not scary, you know. So it was about making those characters real.
Nothing bad's gonna happen, Sam.
Did you think that about my dad before he died?
He sees things as they are, that one.
I promised to protect you if you promised to protect me.
Well, I wanted it to be its own myth, you know, a new myth that we created, or I created. So I wanted to create this kind of strange creature. It's interesting, when we were in Sundance, people thought that the Babadook was an Australian myth. I really liked that idea, that people actually thought it was real, you know, or that it was a legend, a folklore, Australian folklore. So yeah, I wanted to create a name that didn't mean anything and that had its own kind of meaning. And somehow I, you know, was daydreaming. A Serbian friend mentioned that Babaroga was the name for the boogeyman in Serbian. And I asked him, and I thought, oh, that doesn't feel right, but I like the word Baba. And so then Babadook came along when I was writing the book in the script. And then, yeah, I just the name stuck, and it seemed to make sense. And the way that it was kind of, it grew out of that name. I guess, you know, the Babadook has two layers. It has the childlike outer layer, and it also has this under layer that's the more adult, more terrifying layer. But I always felt that the top layer, you know, there are a few influences like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I like the idea of this kind of old English gentleman. And also a thing about the outer layer is that it's all constructed. So there's a hat, a face that could be a mask, there's a wig, you can't see any skin, there's gloves, you can't see feet. So it could be all a creation, you know, it's something that maybe a demon could be putting over itself to hide itself. And I like that idea, you know, of something that looked human but actually wasn't. You know, I frustrated the hell out of everyone saying no CGI, no CGI. But we did all of our effects in camera, and you know, some of them were very time-consuming and laborious, but I'm really glad that we did that because it has a different feeling to it. You know, I really love Méliès, Georges Méliès, and I love the old in-camera effects, and it somehow fit with this book, you know, and this kid's idea of what a monster would be. Kids don't dream up CGI monsters. It doesn't happen. So, yeah, I wanted it to look handmade. And for that to happen, it really needed to be all in camera.
Oh my God. Did he hurt anyone?
The boy has significant behavioural problems.
This monster thing has got to stop, all right? It's just a book. It can't hurt you.
Well, she was a good friend of mine. You know, I went through drama school with her. I've known her for a long time. I didn't actually think of her. I didn't write the film for her, but when time came to cast, she was just the obvious choice. It's a really hard role for an actress to play. It's a very wide range. And, you know, we could get some actresses who could play the first half of the film but not the second half, or vice versa. But with Essie, she had the range to encompass that huge role. So she auditioned, and she was the strongest by far for the role, so we gave it to her. I've been told that, you know, by other journalists, male journalists, that they couldn't imagine a male creating that role. I guess, I don't know if that's true or not, but I guess I was very interested in her complexity, and I didn't want her to just be a two-dimensional character. So she's everything, you know, she's not a perfect human being either. She lies at times. She's not honest. She's not a good mother. These are things that maybe came from me being a woman. You know, I had empathy for this character, and I wasn't afraid to show her bad sides. I'm lucky that I knew how to act, because to anyone who's worked with a 6-year-old will tell you it's not an easy task. I mean, Noah is an amazing child, really. He was extraordinary. But he didn't know what film was. He didn't, you know, he thought to do one more take meant that he'd done it wrong. So, you know, there were all these things that he had to learn along the way. But it was terribly difficult, but it was also one of the most rewarding things about the film. Because to see him take off in that way, like, you know, to really shine when he had no acting experience was extraordinary. We really protected him in the making of the film, so in some of the more horrific scenes he had a male sort of adult stand-in so he never heard any of that really terrible stuff that was directed at him. He's seen half of the movie, the first half, not quite half, but his mum's a child psychologist, and his dad, you know, they decided, yeah, he can see probably the first half. And he did. He was really proud. He was really proud of himself. He thought, I did a good job. And, you know, he was very excited. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was talking to someone else recently about that, you know, because I'm always fascinated by adults who say they can't even sit through a horror. I find that really weird. I'm a bit suspicious of them. I think what's going on, it's only a film. So I used to watch them as a kid, and so my friend was saying that she spoke to a psychologist who said, if you watch horror films and you can handle them, you're very balanced. So I would like to think that's true. Showing images to kids, it can be a fine line. You can traumatize a kid, I think. You have to be careful. But yeah, I mean, isn't it a good thing to face your fear? I think it's ultimately a positive thing.
You all right?
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
You don't have to be fine,
Just a bit stressed at the moment.
All children see monsters.
Not like this. I want to report someone stalking me and my child.
We had to cut the budget in order to get it made, and not wait around for years, So it was hard. I think we're lucky we have government funding, say places like America, they don't have that. They have studios or they have nothing. So we had that money, but yeah, it wasn't an easy film to make. I think just making a film with such a strong world that needed to look a certain way on such a low budget was a really big challenge. And it's only because we had an amazing core crew that we could get it finished to that standard. It wasn't like a lot of horror films, a lot of low budget films are handy cam kind of found footage or, easy to get. You can just pull it off the street, but it wasn't the case with this film. A lot of it was shot in the studio, had to be pre-lit. We got to Adelaide where we were filming, and that's where we got our finance, and we realised there were no terrace houses. They were all low-set houses. So the house that I'd designed in my head didn't exist. So we really had to create it. And we were just very lucky they'd just built these new studios, so we could do that. I don't think we could have made the film in a real house because so many things happened to the house.
You can't get rid of the Babadook.
You can bring me the boy. You can bring me the boy. You can bring me the boy.
It had a small release, much smaller than we would have liked. Sometimes Australians don't like to see their own films. It's a curious thing, but it's true. But we had packed houses where we played, and the response was really amazing. It was amazing from critics who don't normally like horror at all. And so we got a lot of support from areas we normally wouldn't have, which was a big surprise to us. So yeah, we had a very wide audience as a result. People say to me, this big wave of Australian horror, and I think, where? Where is it? There's not that many of us. I think we've made some great horror over the years. My favourite Australian horror would be a film called Wake in Fright, which not many people would see as a horror. It's not like a horror like a slasher horror. It's just horrific because of the way Australians are portrayed. It's really scary. Yeah, I don't think that we have masses of horror films being made, no.
You're trespassing in my house!
I'm sick, Sam. I need help.
I'm working on 2 scripts, not horror, maybe a horror world, but not quite standard horror. But yeah, I'm also looking at adapting our work and working with other writers as well. So, I've turned down 2 studio films since Sundance, since January, because they weren't films that really spoke to me. But yeah, I think the amazing thing about America is you have budgets, you have the capacity to reach a large audience, but I just have to be careful that I'm still making films that I really want to make. So I'm being selective, put it that way.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, thanks, Vincent.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Careful to the...
Oh, yes, of course. There we go.
Perfect.
Baba.